This video is brought to you by Capital Edge Australia.
Back again, mid-month, mock draft time. The carnival is underway, the national championships are underway, so we are getting more and more information about the next wave of talent that will be coming through the AFL system as of mid to late November this year. So, as the ladder stands right now, because a lot of mock draft videos, especially the ones that I've done, do get a lot of views kind of after the initial phase of when I post it. So the first few days might not be a whole lot of views, but as people start to get more and more draft content, they tend to gravitate towards these videos, in which case the ladder has changed from when I released the video, and then they comment going, why do you have this team in this spot? This is as the ladder stands after round 13, with no trades, because that'll be for future videos, but I will talk about the teams that might go after certain picks at certain stages. Alright, got all that? Excellent, let's go. Alrighty, nice and quick. Harley Reid is going to be the number one pick. West Coast are the worst team in the competition. Now, yes, GWS and Melbourne might look to get to this pick. They're the only two teams that really can in terms of their draft capital. And for Melbourne, I think they would have to go down a more player-driven route than just straight up picks. They would need picks and players, whereas the Giants could go just a pick path, which would be excellent for them and get a generational talent in the door, and hopefully Harley can stand up to even 10% of the expectations that are put on him. I think North would be smart to bid on Jed Walter at 2. I think I'm going to be one of the only people in the country that is like this, but if you know that Gold Coast are going to have to match a bid, in the terms of equality, bid on him as if you want him. North need a tall forward. Go and bid on the tall forward. I don't think that's out of the realms of possibility here. I don't think North go on midfielder, even though Zane Dersma can be a midfielder for them in the future. He is a guy that is going to threaten in the forward half of the ground. It's between he and Nate Caddy. I still like Dersma a bit more. I know Caddy's come on really strong in the last month or so, and I definitely think it's a decision between those two. I've still got Dersma slightly ahead at this point. That could change at any point. And then the Hawks definitely could take Nate Caddy at this spot. Could definitely take Zane Dersma if he was still on the board. But considering Tyler Brockman's working up the ground, Luke Bruce isn't going to be there forever. The mercurial nature of Nick Watson just really appeals to me. I know that the Hawks are going to look at a guy like Archer Reid, as they should. Tall forward would be great. How much longer do you give Jacob Kazitsky, even though he's only 22 years of age, is going to be an interesting question as we approach this. But when you've got, in this case, pick 4, or pick 3 if Walter doesn't get bid on, can you really pass up a bloke that good? I don't think you can, but it'll be an interesting watch. And what I like as a Hawthorn fan is that there are so many blokes that we could go after. Will Day was pretty much announced to us almost straight away, the same as Denver Granger Barris, Cam McKenzie and Josh Ward. So to have a bit of mystery is pretty cool, I think. Nate Caddy to Carlton just works in a lot of ways. They need an offensive threat. They need midfield X factor. He brings both in a big, big way. Daniel Curtin to the Giants, I really like, especially if Harry Himmelberg is going to be at Richmond next year. A little bit of tall depth. Yes, Sam Taylor's got to come back into this side. I understand that. And they've still got Lee Kalir, who they drafted in the first round a couple of drafts ago. Jack Buckley's come on in a really big way. I know that. But having a bit more depth, Daniel Curtin is a very versatile player. He can play back. He's played some as a ruck rover. He's played a little bit forward as well. I do see him as a defender, which you might argue the Giants don't need. But I don't think a player of that quality should be passed up by the Giants at this spot. Sydney getting Ashton Moyer would seemingly be unfair because he looks to be such a clever player on both feet. I don't think the Swans would need to play him necessarily in the first month of 2024. There are a couple of recruiters and people that might have a bit more expertise than me that are watching him, potentially a bit more than I am, although I am doing my best to watch as many of these players as I can, that are seeing that he is struggling against senior bodies, which is okay. Hell, you're only 18 years old. It's astonishing when players don't a little bit. But I feel like the Sydney culture, not hiding him away or anything, but letting him develop more at his own speed as the Swans try to figure out their problems in the key back department, etc., would be a good thing. I think Daniel Curtin would suit the Swans beautifully. I don't see him getting to that pick, though. And the Giants round out with Colby McKercher. Now, you could say, but they could go for Harley Reid, in which case they wouldn't get this pick. But if we stick to the current format, then getting a midfielder in the draft would be something that they would absolutely do. And I don't think Daniel Curtin would be there at the Swans pick if they didn't take him first. So I definitely think that Sydney and the Giants in this iteration of the mock draft would either go Moya, McKercher, as I've talked about, or McKercher and Moya. McKercher's a very good midfielder, had a really good day in the Carnival only a week or so ago. I really like him a lot, and what I like about him in terms of things that he can't control is he has no expectations on him when it comes to comparing him to a Harley Reid, and we don't have any evidence that suggests he's going to be a much worse player. So that would be really good. A guy of his talent, going to the Giants in this case, where he can develop quietly and potentially become a star, would be a great thing for him, I think. Gold Coast are going to have to get another bid here because I think Jake Rogers is the kind of guy that he's only going to grow in stock the more that this year goes. Now, are Melbourne the kind of team that are going to bid on him? Okay, that might be a question for another day, but I really, really like this guy a lot. I really do. His ability to find the ball is just awesome, and he's got that footy IQ and nous that is very watchable. How that translates to AFL level, hey, no one knows. No one knows. Not a person knows. But the eye test, he is an absolute winner. O'Sullivan is that versatile tall. Now, I know the Demons went Matty Jefferson and Jacob Van Rooyen for their last two drafts in the first round. So having a third might be a little bit of a misnomer maybe, but they've pretty much got depth everywhere else. So if they can get a guy in, another tall, develop him still, their future spine being Gawn Grundy in the ruck, Van Rooyen and Jefferson obviously up forward, and then you might have O'Sullivan mixed with May and Lever. Could work. Could a Harrison Petty go to another club if they tried to poach him or something? Definitely. I don't think they need another midfielder. They definitely don't need another wingman. Do they take a small forward here? Highly doubt it. And O'Sullivan's upside would appeal to the D's. So I really, really like that fit. Speaking of unfair, Archer Reid to the Cats just is not okay, but it's where he falls in this draft, and he would be perfect for the Cats. What more can you say? He's 200 centimetres. He's taller than 200 centimetres, I should say. And his athletic profile is very similar to an 18-year-old Jeremy Cameron. So, whilst, yes, they would probably still need some sort of bullocking forward in a post-Tom Hawkins era, how would you be able to pass that up? I've got no idea, and I've drafted Will Patton to the Dogs plenty of times, but he's that bridge between their small and tall defenders, who's a beautiful kick as well. I know everyone's going to look at it and say, well, is it a Sicily type? But I look at more as a Isaac Cumming, who isn't quite at James Sicily's level yet, could still definitely get there, and I like Isaac a lot. But if you want a current player to compare to, I think it's more fair to talk about Isaac than it is about the Hawthorn skipper. But the Dogs need cleaner movement out of their defensive 50. I don't know why Bailey Dale has forgotten how to kick a footy, but he kind of has, and I think having a guy that can both defend and attack from the defensive 50 is going to help the Dogs a lot. I figured out how to pronounce Nathan's last name yet? No, because I didn't realise that you could take the commentary off one of his games off mute. I thought it was just a silent broadcast, and I'm an idiot, so I will happily own up to that. If Tom Doedee isn't at the club next year, he's done his ACL anyway. I know they're not going to have guys like Luke Brown down there, so I think that rebounding halfback flanker is what Adelaide could target. Now, if I'm the Crows personally, they've got 3 picks in the top about 26, 28 at the moment. I would be packaging them up, getting into the top 5 and taking either Dersma or Caddy. That is what I would do. But we don't have trades in this particular iteration of the mock draft, and this bloke could be well and truly worth the discussion, well worth the investment, well worth the time, well worth the talent. His ability to just grab the footy and go would suit this young Adelaide style perfectly and is something that they do really need to consider. Will McCabe for the Hawks, he's going to be a Hawk. He's Luke's son, who outgrew him by the age of 8, I think, because Luke was not a tall man at all. Dominating at under 18's level. Got rested for the game for South Australia's latest game, which I thought was relatively interesting, but the Hawks will be hoping that a bid doesn't come before pick 12 because it is going to become a lot more difficult for them to match points and then get back into the draft at about that 20 to 28 kind of range to do kind of what they did with Josh Weddle last year, which is to get another pick in, forgo the future because they'll end up fixing it anyway and getting them in the door. The Josh Weddle trade worked out really well. I expect the Hawks to try and do that again with their future picks or with picks that they will get after they trade out some players at the end of the year. I really like the Bombers fit for Logan Morris here. 2 meter Peter's going to be the number one man. We know that. I'm still not convinced Sam Wiedemann is going to be the answer long term, but Logan Morris can develop with those guys in the side. And I'm still not 100% convinced on the Bombers as small forwards, but we've got to give them time to develop. I understand that. The Davey twins could be anything, or the Davey brothers, I should say. And I just think the Bombers could use a lead-up forward who is going to take opposition focus, really. Kyle Langford's been doing that. But if you asked Bombers fans, would you want another guy who can play like Kyle Langford in that role, you would say yes. I think he's taller than Kyle Langford at 194 centimetres, and he's a beautiful kick. It's a win-win. The Dons don't really need midfield depth at all. Sure, they could go after a centre-half back, but there isn't really one on the board at this very point that they could go after. It's not a very strong key back draft, especially in the top end. And let's be honest, if you've looked at guys that teams like Essendon, Collingwood and Hawthorn have drafted over the years, your best players don't necessarily come from the first round anyway, or your needs don't need to be solved with your first pick. Could the Bombers find a centre-half back in the 30s or the 40s if the time comes? Of course they could. And for the Saints, you could argue that they don't need another midfielder, but the pure talent of Riley Sanders just cannot be ignored at this point. He is the type of player that you could put on a wing and just let him develop. I know that there are staunch defenders of guys like Jack Bytel and Ryan Burns, who, although I'm not really convinced on at the moment, guys like Brad Crouch, Zach Jones, who are either on the park or not on the park, but I don't really see as being part of the next premiership tilt for the Saints. I think they can take them a long way, especially Brad Crouch as that foil kind of midfielder. You can definitely tell that the Saints are targeting quality mids and quality bodies in the draft. Your Owens, your Windhager, your Philippou and these guys. And Sanders fits that bill to an absolute T. Bulldogs, they don't necessarily need midfield depth, but Colton Tholstrup is the kind of guy that I could see them going for. He's got X Factor, and if you really think a guy like Adam Treloar having 34 disposals but not really doing a whole lot on the ground is the answer, I can't really help you. I think it is more of a player and a coach problem rather than a list problem, so best talent available for the Dogs does still make some sense to me. Jack Deline to the Ds, good leadership, good small forward. Cozzy Pickett would have a mate down there as guys like Alex Neil-Bullen are definitely up the ground. Charlie Spargo and Tom Sparrow aren't really playing that traditional small forwards role. So if you're asking yourself where exactly do their small forward depth come from, well, Deline would help that in a big way, which we love. I know Bailey Scott's been amazing on a wing, and you could argue Taron Thomas might be the other wingman, but I really like what Darcy Wilson can bring to the outside of the contest. He's got nice speed, uses the ball really well, and if North can come away from this draft with some more potent threats, then that can only be a good thing. I feel like they're going to roll the dice with Coleman Jones and Charlie Comben again at this point. That could change as the months go on, I understand that. But I don't think that they're going to be in line to take a tall forward that isn't Archer Reed, because he's definitely not going to be there at their second pick. But if they go with Dersma, like I had mocked, that's where they're going to stand. Do I think North should take Archer Reed? Probably. He's having some consistency problems at the moment, Archer. So as it stands, I think they could look to fix their polish and their ball use. They've got enough guys at the centre bounce, so getting Wilson on a wing is going to be a win. And how good has Bailey Scott's form been, by the way? And if you haven't watched a mock draft before, Mitch Edwards to Collingwood might be the greatest fit in this whole draft. He's the best ruckman in this draft. I know Gold Coast have got an academy ruckman who is quite good as well, who will be facing off very shortly in the carnival, so that might change, but he's going to be the best ruckman that every club can have. Collingwood need another one because I don't think Mason Cox is the answer. I know Darcy Cameron is already established as a ruckman. I know that. But having Mitch, who is going to help out, and he can take a mark and kick a goal as well as Darcy Cameron can, it's just a fit that makes sense and a fit that I love. So that's the first round mock draft, guys. What do you think? Comment below. Let me know. Like the video if you like the video. Subscribe to join the Daz Talks Footy family. If you want to join my Patreon with over 25 pieces of bonus content, patreon.com/Daz Talks Footy is the way to go. Special thanks to Capital Edge Australia for sponsoring this video. If you want to check them out, their link is in the description as well. If you are looking to break into the real estate investment property market, they are the kings. They don't hold stock and they're not a project marketer, and all of your meetings are absolutely free, so check them out. Have a great one, guys. I hope round 14 doesn't have as much trouble off the field as on it. But who knows, right? That's footy for you. Take it easy.